I love that they added that feature. It's seriously been so nice. Now I download those and then I pop it into Audacity just to do like a little like a noise reduction if there's any like background noise, and
Nice.
then the audio sounds super good. Whoa! Hold on, I have the stream open somewhere else, and I just heard me all of a sudden. It was like ah noise. Whoops. Okay, that scared me. All right. Yes, clearly I am completely with it so far.
Oh, 100%.
Okay. Well, at least I know that it's working. I heard us, so we're good.
This is true. That's how we
All
test.
right, that's right. Yeah, scare yourself, and it's good. Um, do we have anything else for competitive? I don't know. I feel bad only
Um,
giving you
I
like those
mean,
two
yeah, there's not
things.
really a whole lot going on, at least Hearthstone wise. There's nothing to announce yet because we're a ways off from the first MT.
Yeah. Okay. I put those couple of things in. All right. Perfect. All right. Well, are you ready?
Definitely. Let's do this.
Okay. Make sure I got this thing. All right. Welcome to episode 17 of the TCCG Roundtable. We're your hosts, dragonrider and RonMexico. How you
Hey,
doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Good, good. It is Friday. I'm excited. I know we do this every Friday, but for some reason I was like reminded today that today's Friday. So I'm like, oh yeah, it's
Oh, it
Friday.
feels good being a Friday. It's
it
good time all the time.
it does. And I don't know why, but like this week has felt so long. And I think I've just been so focused on like the content and the other things that I'm doing that it's just like work day, work day, work day, work day. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh, today's Friday. Although I still am doing a Saturday stream and then I'm still doing some other things on Sunday. So like it's fine. It's fine.
The grind never stops,
but
but it's about to be the weekend, and that's something.
that's right. That's right. At least it'll be like chill grinding. That's what we'll call it. Like relaxed grinding.
I love
It'll
it.
still be good. Well, let's catch up real quick. I know we you and I were talking a little bit before we started our recording. We don't have a guest this week, and there's not like a ton of news and necessarily competitive stuff. We have a cool topic that we're gonna get into, but real quick, is there like how have you been doing with Hearthstone and just like card games? What's been going on with you the last week?
Well, you know me, I'm obsessed with Hearthstone, and I play very little other card games because I probably play too much Hearthstone if there is such a thing. But I've been streaming a lot. I've been jamming my absolute favorite deck, and that is Shock Spitter Hunter. It is back. They basically kind of killed it, the deck archetype, with the nerf recently in Hearthstone. Um, but then the mini set came out, and then they came out with another round of nerfs after the mini set completely broke the format with Frost Death Knight running rampant over everything, and it opened up so many different things. There's an incredible amount of tier 2 decks at the moment, and there's only really one, like maybe a couple tier 1 decks. Shadow Priest is really really good, but it's not too broken to crowd out everything else like the previous meta was. So my favorite deck came back, and I started playing it a lot. I took it to, I think right now I'm at top 30 legend with Shock Spitter Hunter, and I'm gonna keep playing it. And we're gonna see how far this ride can go. But I'm pretty hyped because the meta feels pretty healthy right now.
Yeah, and I think you also hit pretty high legend on a second server with it as well.
I did get Legend on Asia as well. I think I'm somewhere in the top 200. I didn't play much after hitting Legend there because I kept getting some disconnect issues on Asia, which just happens from time to time. So I'm like, oh, let me just jam Americas a lot. But yeah, it's just really exciting. Anytime I can play that deck and feel like it's at least competitive, I'm happy because it's just like so much fun for me.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's funny that you brought up the like aggressive shadow priest. So for me this last week with Hearthstone, uh I was I tried a couple of different versions of that shadow priest, and it was just like 50% ish win rate with like all the versions. And I'm like, everyone says this deck is so good and it's supposed to like help you win games, and I'm supposed to hit legend with this, and it's not working. And it was like, well, you know what, 3 days of that, and I was like, okay, I'm done, like screw this. And
Fair.
I saw your success, so I was like, well, I'm gonna try this shock spitter hunter. I don't really know what I'm doing with it quite like you do. You have way more games with it than I do. But yeah, I still went like 62% win rate with it yesterday. It was like,
Oh hell
this
yeah.
feels great. So yeah, definitely gonna keep chugging along with that, because yeah, that was sweet. Um,
Yeah,
and
I
then
may have
I've
an
been
irresponsible game count on Shock Spitter Hunter. I'm not gonna check right now, but yeah, I mean, the more games you play with anything, just the more familiar you get with it. But I got a chance to tune into your stream recently and watch you playing some Shock Spitter, and it made me very happy. What other things have you had going on in the Hearthstone space outside of switching off Shadow Priest and truly embracing the Smork again with Hunter?
That's right. You gotta live that smork life. um, so I've also been doing. We're gonna be having a rotation for Hearthstone coming up pretty soon. So I've also been putting some work into doing some YouTube videos focused on, like, okay, we know the first video was like neutrals and going through a lot of the neutrals that are going to be leaving with that rotation, leaving standard, and kind of looking at their impact over the last like 2 years. So each day I'm going to be doing a couple of the classes for those videos. So that's what I've been working on, which is kind of actually cool, because sometimes I think we were talking about this before we started recording as well, but like, for me, a lot of things are like out of sight, out of mind. So if they're not used in decks that like I'm playing against right now, sometimes I just like forget that the cards even exist. So I was like looking back through these expansions. I'm like, oh yeah, that card, that was a thing for a while. Like, oh yeah, that
Yeah,
was used, and then it got nerfed, and then it disappeared. Or, so it's been kind of fun actually, like looking back at those cards and kind of going over that and kind of reminiscing about the archetypes and the decks that have been in standard, kind of on and off over the last 2 years. So that's
I
been
like
that's
it.
been kind of fun.
A
Yeah,
trip down
it's
memory lane.
yeah, which is great. And then I could be like, good, now they're gonna stay in memory lane and they're leaving,
Yeah.
and we don't have to worry
like
about it
uh
anymore.
I don't know, like Rush Warrior, right? Like that was a big
Yeah.
thing in Barons, and Barons is still a set that exists in Standard, but nobody would dream of playing Rush Warrior right now if you're trying to consistently win games at least.
That's
But
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of funny. It's also an interesting experience just when someone like makes a little innovation on ladder and you see a card that comes up and you're like, wait, that's a card that exists in this game? I had no clue. And like you'll see even top streamers do that too. Someone playing at like rank 1 legend, they're like, wait, what is this card? And they have to stop and read it. It's just like nobody plays it ever. It's fun stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like sometimes, I don't know, it's not necessarily like you're having to learn everything all over again, but yeah, it's like, what is that? Oh yeah, that's a thing. Or sometimes when you're talking about something and someone says a card name or something in chat, you're like, what is that? I haven't seen that. So yeah, definitely a little bit of an interesting thing. Also, I guess outside of Hearthstone, ever since our episode last week, I have still been looking into Soulforge Fusion, and I really freaking want to try that. Like, I'm looking
Oh
into
yeah.
it. I'm like, okay, I'm reading about it, and uh, actually kind of looking at that and thinking about how I can can learn that, how I can learn the different mechanics, kind of actually is what sparked our main topic today. But I guess we should start by moving into some news and organized play before we get to that point. So let's jump into our news here. We have a couple of things here. Speaking of Hearthstone, they did announce that patch 25.6 is going to be coming up next week with lots of changes to Battlegrounds because that's going to be the Battleground mid-season patch. But they also mentioned it's like one little sentence at the end. So basically said like, hey, we'll also be talking about the upcoming expansion with that. So I was like, yeah, which that made me also kind of think, okay, well, usually this first expansion of the year, they also start talking about rotation. They also do like talking about core set changes and whatever else might be kind of coming down the line for the rest of the year. So that's what sparked me to be like, okay, I'm doing these like daily videos now for what cards are going to be leaving standard. So then that's like already done before they talk about this, before they talk about this next expansion. And then I can start doing some content on that. But the big thing I would say for that is they're bringing buddies back into Battlegrounds. And I know I've seen a lot of people pretty excited about that.
Yeah, buddies were fun. Buddies were really fun. I don't even play BGs, but I played when buddies were around for a little bit. And I was like, hey, this is cool.
Yeah, well, they're bringing them back. And they've revealed some new ones because ever since like the buddies previously, they've added some more heroes since then too. So they're also kind of announcing like the new buddies for those newly added heroes as well. So yeah, gonna be interesting. I think it's also kind of cool how they've found this cadence of release, like alternating kind of between the battlegrounds and standard stuff. I've been hearing a lot of people that are pretty excited about that, where they say, oh, by the time I'm, not really enjoying standard anymore, then something new is coming out for battlegrounds, right? And then they can go play battlegrounds, or vice versa. So that's a pretty cool cadence and something that having those couple of really like popular, enjoyable modes is really helping them, I think, for sure.
Agreed.
All right. Then we have, I'll talk about a couple of new expansions or new sets coming out. First, we have the Flesh and Blood next set. Outsiders is releasing on March 24th, so a couple weeks from now still. And then also Pokemon Scarlet and Violet expansion is going to be releasing on March 31st. So couple of new expansions for card games coming out, and I'm sure we'll get more next month because I feel like March and April are like, like December, January, and then like March, April, like those seem to be like the two kind of biggest times that we especially see expansions and sets, and a couple weeks apart for every game. So if you play multiple games, like rip your wallet. I'm sorry. It's like every couple weeks,
Expansion
there's
season's
something.
coming. Get ready.
That's right. Expansion season. It's what it is, really. So yeah, those couple coming out this month, and I believe there was also another one that was just announced for MTG Arena. So yeah, didn't see a release date, but I can check into that. But then the other thing that I saw was Marvel Snap is making changes to featured and hot locations, which is kind of interesting. But basically, their post is that both of those are now only going to be 24 hours, and they're only going to appear about half of the time, 50%. So I don't know. Personally, I kind of enjoyed at least some of them, like depending on what the location, was. Sometimes I'd be like, this is great. And I would play like as much as I could for like that 48 hours during that featured location. Sometimes I'd be like, wow, I hate this one. I'm not going to play until that location, featured location like goes away. And I think a lot of other people were kind of like that too, where a lot of people just didn't enjoy having a certain location appear like every single time, or most of the time for that period of time. So they are reducing that. There's still going to be a thing. They're not removing it completely, but I don't know. How do you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I do think it's a good change. I dabble in Marvel Snap. I've got the collection level up to close to like 3,000 because I just pretty much play dailies just every day and then stop. So it does enough to like progress things along, and it's a very fun game. And what really I think takes away a lot of the fun is when the featured or hot location is like really bad. It's like because it sticks around for too long, so it's like a positive change. Because I mean, who wants to log into the game and look on the main screen, and the main screen says featured location, the worst one, and you're like, what? Why? And now every game, or like 90% of my games or so, is gonna feel like I start off the game and oh god, it's this again. Or yeah, you have to like build a deck to make it work with that location, but like that location maybe works best with decks that you don't have. Like, oh, this is gonna destroy your entire deck. Enjoy. Um, well, I guess you should have the cards that are kind of rare that benefit from destroy effects. Oh, you don't have those? Oh well, good luck on your games for the next 2 days. So yeah, I like the change overall. I think it's smart. They listen to feedback from the community and they're like, yeah, it's a feels bad moment for a lot of people when the randomly featured thing happens to not be um, as enjoyable as some of the others.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd love to see that become like its own. I'll just use that sandbox mode term, right? Like, I would love to see where you could go in and you could pick, even if it's just like a handful of locations, and then maybe play against your friends where, like, those locations appear, and then you could, battle each other and see. Like, I feel like that could be a really fun, like, separate entire mode in
Oh
the
yeah, that's
game.
a
And
cool
just,
idea.
like, just if you're gonna play ladder or whatever your ranked games, just have those as like the regular game that they created. If you're gonna have those featured locations or those other things, like, make that its own mode where people can mess with it, or then you use those featured locations if people just want to jump in. Then at various points, like, they have those, or people can create their own. Like, I think having that as its own mode would just be absolutely fun. I would love to do that.
Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. They already have the like play a friend mode that they've sort of organically created. Essentially, it's like a tournament mode that Hearthstone never had. But they could definitely build on that. That'd be a really cool idea to do.
Yeah. I know. Imagine actually, like, playing against somebody and just using a code or like a room instead of having to add them to your friends list that's capped. That still bothers me. Like, I'm so
Oh, it
salty
drives me
about
nuts.
that. Like,
200. 200 is the cap. We're gonna
I
start this game in 2014. It was BattleNet the cap in general for like 200. It's like, yeah, gonna have
I
this
know.
around forever. Let you build all these friends, but then you only get 200.
I've squeaked by for a while now with 240. So I don't know how I've done that, but
Oh, because you had like things on other servers, and then they merged them together, so they can't like
yeah,
remove the
that's right.
ones that you already had. So essentially, you were grandfathered in to have more than 200. I never had
That's
more than
right.
200 when they did the merger, so now I'm hard capped. Feels bad.
Uh yeah, mine's that solid 240. And it hovers there. It hovers at 239 or 240, like, all the time. And then it's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, okay, now I have to add this person to go spectate them for a tournament match. Okay, so let's find somebody to remove off my list."
Yep.
Yeah,
Now they got dragonrider like sending out fruit baskets and apology cards, like, "Hey, sorry, I had to remove you as the."
That's right. But you know what? Only if it's in the same country. Because they have limits on that too.
Right.
So, like, dang it. Like, can't send gift cards, or
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
BattleNet balance unless it's in the same country as you. But why? It's an international game, and I have so many international friends now, and
No, no,
people
no.
that
Too
watch
com
my.
too complicated.
Oh. And I know it's like, it's also related to the various country like tax laws and money and all that kind of stuff. But still, I'm like, dang, I want to, that's
Yeah.
a whole other thing. But yeah,
Speaking of whole other things, we got some competitive and organized play news. We don't have a whole lot going on this past week here, but coming up, we do have Pokemon Vancouver Regional Championships that are happening this weekend, March 11th and 12th. We're going to be pretty excited to hear about the results in Vancouver. Um, Beyond Pokemon, we've got some things going on in Battle Spirits Saga, announcing launch events March 24th through 26th in Las Vegas, London, Melbourne, Australia, and Latin America. $350,000 prize pools and on site pickup for product. We'll have a link for you in the um, show later as well.
yeah, I can't believe that's only 2 weeks away now. I remember like looking at that when they were first announcing it and being like, "Oh, that's 2 full months," or like 7 weeks, and now that's only 2 weeks away. Like,
Yeah,
wow.
coming soon.
Yeah,
Just mark your calendars. Just day by day, one day closer to Battle Spirit Saga.
that's
Almost there.
right. Yeah, and then it's officially releasing for everyone, right at the beginning of April. So those events are leading up to that big official launch. So pretty exciting there. But I'm bummed. I really wanted to go to the Vegas one, but then just them really announcing it and announcing all the information like 2 months ahead of time, I was like, that's not enough time to now,
Yeah,
have the funds to get a hotel, make the travel plans, and get also the funding for the product itself to play. And it was just like, I really bummed. I really wanted to go, but we'll keep our eye on it. Hopefully, it'll still be a really cool event. I follow some people on Twitter that I'm pretty sure are going, so I'll
nice.
be I'll be living vicariously through their posts on Twitter.
Hey, there's still time to plan for Vegas. TwitchCon's happening in Vegas in like October.
True, true. There you go. Also, Vegas has Chipotle. I think we were talking about this in your stream. There's no Chipotle
Yeah.
where I am. It's
Are you like
like
200 something miles away from a
yeah,
Chipotle? For
it's
shame.
so sad. We had one for a little while and then it closed, and we've been very sad. So
Step up your
yeah,
game, Chipotle.
I know that's right. Bring it back. Bring it back. We'll spend more money. We promise. Bring it back. Oh, yeah. So, are you ready to dive into our main topic this week?
Oh, absolutely.
All right. So, for our roundtable topic this week, uh, yeah, we wanted to talk about kind of the learning aspect of card games. Now, how I want to break this down is there's a couple of different, I feel like, layers to this topic where you could say learning a new deck or a new archetype, maybe within the game you already play. Or you could say, what are the, kind of the aspects of learning a new card game compared to maybe one you already know? But also, we talked last week about how there's so many different kind of concepts and different things that card games are trying now, right? Where uh, one might be like Magic or Pokemon, where you put your resource in your deck and then you have to draw those. Or they're like Hearthstone or Legends of Runeterra, where like every turn you get one more of that mana to use automatically without having to have it in your deck. So there's different aspects and different like fundamental things for each card game that are also kind of different. And I want to talk about just all of these, like how do you approach learning something that you're maybe somewhat familiar with versus something that is completely new, or how do you approach like those huge differences? And is there challenges that come along with that? I have some ideas, but I wanna hear from you for a little bit first and see kind of what you think of this.
Oh yeah. I mean, I love that it's such a nuanced question because there's a lot of different angles you can tackle it depending on which different thing you're talking about. To start, like as far as a new deck or archetype goes, it's a whole lot easier, of course, because you already know the game. You don't need to learn a lot of basic mechanics or other things. And then you just need to figure out how this particular deck or archetype might work within your pre-existing framework and context of how you play and how you win your games. Um, so for me, like Hearthstone as an example, with a brand new deck, one of my primary things to do to learn something, at least to start, is make the deck and just dive in immediately. Play it terribly, play it wrong, see what goes wrong, try to figure it out on my own why it went so wrong. Sometimes I win, and I win despite my best efforts to lose, with like playing everything all wrong because I don't understand like the main win conditions of the deck or something. After a few games or so, I find it's a good idea because you have a little bit of hands-on experience, and you've got an idea of like what the game at least remotely should look like. Then I like to watch somebody play it who actually knows it. Or maybe, oh, like, hey, it's so and so's deck. Maybe I should watch that person who made the deck and see what their thoughts are on it and why they think it's good and how they think you should play it. And do a whole monkey see, monkey do type of thing where it's like, okay, now that they've given me an idea, I can figure it out. Oftentimes, you can find like deck guides and other things. There's just a lot of resources out there, and then put all the pieces together. It's like, okay, first I blundered with it, then I watched someone do it right. Now I'm gonna put these all into practice together. And like for me, that's like the big way that I dive into brand new deck types or archetypes if I have not, had any experience with them before.
Oh, that's so funny. I think I'm almost the opposite. Like, I jotted a note while you're talking there just so I didn't lose my train of thought. It's like when I do a new deck, and I've put this in some of my like strategy things, I will look at the deck list and I'll start to like analyze it before I even play a game. Like I'll look at the deck list and then I go, okay, like what does the curve of the deck look like? Okay, what are maybe some of the key cards? Can I recognize even like one potential win condition or goal of the deck? Like I will analyze all
Nice.
of that like before I try to jump into a game. Unless I'm just like playing it for, fun or whatever, just be like, okay, let's go. Like, then I'm just like, let's see what happens. But if I actually really want to learn a deck, I want to improve with it, or I'm trying to like take it seriously to, um, improve my rank, or I want to play it for like a competitive event, then yeah, I will sit there and I'll like analyze it all first before I ever even jump into the game. Or sometimes I'll do kind of like what you were saying, like I might go watch a stream, or I'll look up on a website for Hearthstone. It's like HS Replay or Vision Syndicate, or I'll find write ups and I'll look at people's like Mulligan guides or that kind of stuff before I even ever start a game. And then I'll like take that approach and go, okay, how can I use that jumping in? And then as I play, I'll start to recognize, as you said, some of the same things, but like I kind of do it flipped from how you do it. I
Nice.
That's so interesting. I'm kind of glad though, because this is why I wanted to do something like this topic, because there's so many ways to approach things, and right, like everybody kind of learns differently. Some people need to be very hands-on and they just have to try it. But like for me, I'm like, I don't know. I guess also because I do content and sometimes I have that like I feel like I have to know what I'm doing. So that's probably why I go and
Yeah.
analyze things first. I'm like, I don't want to go in and just play this and sound like I'm a
Yeah.
dummy and I don't know what I'm doing. So
No, I will say I
like
will probably those test games, I'll probably be doing those off stream. Like so I don't feel like I'm completely embarrassing myself in front of an audience. Or I'm like, okay, no, I'm gonna play this like just on my own time and be stupid with it. And then I'll like figure it out later. But I really just enjoy the hands-on aspect. And also it's like a impatience thing. Like, ooh, new deck. Let
Yeah.
me make it. Let me play it. Go, go, go.
That's totally fair. That's totally fair. Yeah. It's just so interesting because I think even, just our, like you said, like that behavior of I just want to play it. I just want to see how it goes, or like I don't know. I've always kind of been like I'm going to do a lot of research on things, or you know, I mean anything, right? If I'm like, "Oh, I've whatever, I don't know, my foot's been hurting really oddly lately, like I'm just gonna do a bunch of research and like see what I find on it before I go like talk to a doctor or do any of that stuff. So I guess I just kind of take that approach of like I'm just gonna research things and then see how I can apply that research. And I think especially card games, like you do still have to have some of that hands-on experience. It's just a matter of like when are you putting in that hands-on experience, or the studying other players, or studying some stats, or whatever kind of thing. When in your learning process for that new deck or archetype are you doing those things? It's kind of interesting to
Oh
look at
yeah.
how different people do that differently.
I was wondering too when you were talking about that because you mentioned like the research approach. Um, is that something? Do you feel like that was contributed to, like when you were growing up and your parents, of course, running like the card games and everything, that you got that early exposure to the atmosphere? Did that influence you at all in that direction? Or do you feel like you always kind of naturally lean towards that anyway, or maybe like a combination?
Honestly, I guess I never thought about how them having the card shop and being in the store a lot growing up probably impacted that. Um, yeah, it was probably a combination of both. Because I mean, even in school, like I was always very, like research for papers or whatever it was. So I feel like I've always been that way. But yeah, being in the card shop probably did influence some. We also I remember times like going with my dad around to other card stores or other stores, and going around and seeing what they were doing or what they had for their stock, or how they organized things like even in their
Mhm.
store, what products they were selling. So yeah, I probably even took that as like that kind of analytical approach of like, okay, I'm gonna like look at this, look at this, look at this, and then how do I apply it? um Also, I don't know, I just like dice spins. I love dice spins. Just like, give me all the dice spins.
Oh,
Oh
yeah,
gosh.
they're great. There's
um,
always some appeal. Well, there's like all these different styles and stuff. Yeah, I love that.
yeah, yeah. And then you'd go and you're like, okay, I want to see if the store has their dice bins organized like by color, like here's all the white dice, here's all the like blue dice, here's like I don't know. I don't know. Like I feel like such a nerd or something right now. I'm like, it was all organized by color. And it was amazing. I'm like nerding out over for dice organization.
Well,
Uh,
i- if someone puts the effort into that, it usually looks really good. And like I'd be the kind of person that would look at that and be like, "Oh wow, that looks amazing," but never actually do it myself, you know, and just be like, "Oh man, I wish this looked nicer." Yeah, but I could have done that, right? Someone did the effort, did that. It's a reward in and of itself to make something cool.
that you know what okay, I'm going to tie this to our topic. That is me with deck archetypes. I really cannot play control decks very well, but I love watching other people who know what they're doing play them and just be like, oh wow, okay, yeah. And then I try to play it and I'm like, why am I not playing cards? Why am I just like holding things?
Yeah.
You're telling me I just hit the hero power button and then I just pass? I just draw a card and I wait. What
Yep.
am I doing? Like why am I not playing things? And like I don't understand, but I love watching people who know what they're doing with control decks play them and like talk through their plays and explain that. But I yeah, I cannot apply that very very well. So I guess now talking about like archetypes. So obviously, both of us have a lot of experience playing Hearthstone, um, and that's something over the years for me. I've been working on as I've done more content, as I've gotten more into competing, as I wanted to just grow as a player and get better. uh, I knew that learning more archetypes was something that I was going to have to do, right? I'm going to have to learn more of a variety of decks. I'm going to have to learn more archetypes. So, what I've done for my approach is I kind of take it in chunks. So, like, for a little while, I might say, okay, I'm going to try to learn this like control deck. I'm really not a control player or like that attrition, slow grindy decks. Like I'm very much just like the let me play minions and hit them in the face, like turn 6, turn 7, let's end this game. I'm
Oh yeah, Smorg
move
Life.
to the next.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
um but for especially like for competition, for casting, I need to know a bigger variety, right? So
Mhm.
for me, it's like, okay, how do I start learning more control decks? And one approach that I've done is again like kind of chunks. So I'll say, okay, I'm gonna try like quest priest or a warrior, slow deck. Let's try this, and I'll just play a couple of games. I'll see how it goes, and then I'll go back to what I'm more comfortable with. Right. And then like the next day, maybe I'll try another 2 games or something. And then it's not a lot of games. So it's very slow, like learning. But it's kind of a way where, especially if I feel like I'm starting to get frustrated or I'm like, oh my gosh, these 3 games were like miserable, or I feel like I really struggled with them, then
Mm.
I can take a breather and like go back to what I'm more comfortable with instead
I
of
love that
spending like
idea.
8 hours,
Yeah.
trying to teach myself like control because that like also it's a game, right? Like I don't want to spend 8 hours teaching myself a deck that I absolutely hate because it's going to make me hate that deck. It's going to make me hate that archetype even more. And I don't want to resent any of the any of the decks or
Fair.
the archetypes. So for me, that like kind of taking it a bit at a time, and then like in a way, I guess quote unquote rewarding myself with like then going back to a
You
more
you're doing
aggressive deck.
control shots with aggro chasers. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. Oh my gosh. Okay, so how about for you, Ron? Because I know you mentioned things like being in top legend 30, like yeah, top 30 legend. Wow. Uh, like you're a very high level player. So do you feel like you have to know more variety of decks and archetypes?
No, I mean it just kind of comes along with I if it happens, it happens is my approach for when I play and when I stream. Um, Primarily, I feel like the best way to have the most entertaining like type of stream that I can do is by playing the things that I enjoy the most. And if I play them a lot, I can play them better and I can win unfavorable matchups with them, and then I can get to the top. But I mean, with this approach, I'll probably never actually hit rank 1 legend or anything like up at the very top unless I'm actually truly willing to like shift archetypes. Because if you want to be number 1, you probably also need to play the number 1 deck. Um, and sometimes my favorite deck happens to be the number 1 deck. And then it's great, then we're cruising. But if that's not the case, if it's a meta where, it's control heavy or something else that I don't typically lean to, um, it depends. A lot of times I do venture into the other archetypes that I maybe don't like quite as much. I know I wouldn't play them quite as well. And then sometimes it just means I commit a little bit more time to trying to learn them better and play them better. And other times it means, hey, I'm not really that focused on being hyper competitive at the moment, because it does detract some of my enjoyment from the game if I'm playing something that has a style that is counter to what I enjoy. Like somebody on my stream recently, because I have a hero request like reward, and someone can just have me play anything that they want me to play, and they wanted me to play like Blood Death Knight. Oh, it was miserable. Let me tell you. Like inside of me was screaming on like every turn because all I was doing was pass, pass, clear one thing, pass. And I'm like, I have cards. I want to play them. you know. So it's just one of those things. You just find a balance, whatever works for you.
Yeah, absolutely. That is one thing that I hope people take from a lot of these conversations is there are multiple ways to learn or approach decks or approach card games in general. And you know, I hope that people understand that, like, find what works for you, try some different stuff. Don't just like watch one streamer or watch one big YouTuber who's like, gotta do it this way. And then you feel like you're banging your head against the wall because that's not working for you. Like me, I said at the top of the show, right? Aggro priest, like supposed to be so good. And everyone's like, look, I hit legend. Look, I my rank. Look, I did so well. And then I tried it multiple lists for 3 days straight. That's all I played. And I got nowhere. And it was like, no. And then I tried something else and started, shooting up in the ranks. Uh, speaking of your stream, I did hear you say during your stream that you also used to play poker. Now, I'm
Ah,
kind of
yes.
curious. Okay, so going from poker, I'll still kind of, we're gonna put that in this card game category. But when you went from like poker to learning Hearthstone, like, can you just talk about that experience? How did you kind of learn Hearthstone and learn, like, even learn how to get better at Hearthstone coming from poker and learning something completely different?
Yeah, there are, I mean, there's some similar skill sets that translate. Um, there's poker is heavily focused on reading your opponent, which is a lot harder to do when your opponent is digital. But there are still tells that you can see, like people hovering over certain cards. The pattern of plays that people make kind of give you an idea of what's coming next. A lot of times, obviously, archetypes tell you how things go. And in poker, um, I mean, there's no like random generation stuff, obviously, like you can see in a digital card game, but there's all kinds of random things that can happen because of the nature of draw itself. Sometimes somebody goes all in with you know I sure hope I hit this one specific thing that is going to come out on the next couple cards. And if they do, they're unbeatable. And if they don't, they can't beat anyone. So you have to suss out like where their position of strength is and what you can do to exploit that, or if it's better for you to run away. Discretion is a better part of valor. Fold, save your money. Um, it's different in Hearthstone. The stakes are uh, confined strictly to that game, and if a random thing happens, there is no I can run away. Poker a lot of times seems more related to snap to me, even because snap you have the option to retreat and you can snap. It's like you're betting, um, but all of it kind of feeds into the same general concept of like there's random factors that you can't control, but there are many things that you can do percentage wise over time that would strictly be correct to improve your overall win rate. So you don't quite focus exactly on right now, this specific thing. But if I do this type of action over and over time, it's expected to give me better results.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like, that was probably something that I really had to learn with Hearthstone over time. Specifically, was like, okay, it might not have worked out right now, but it's still, technically, like, quote unquote, the correct play,
Right.
even though, oh, my opponent had the answer, or, you know, okay, I went for a draw and I didn't draw. I had 4 cards left in my deck. One of them gives me lethal. Dang it, I didn't draw the one, but maybe that was that actual best thing that you had. And you just had to go for it and hope that you
Yeah.
hit. Like you said, the going all in poker, right? Like, you just have to try to hit that out and
Yeah,
hope that you
poker's
get it.
big on like calculating outs and
Hmm.
all these other things too. And
Yeah.
you learn a lot from the mindset. Just okay, I lost because my opponent just hit a 10% chance. I shouldn't freak out and be like, oh, well, clearly I played wrong because I lost. Like, you're not going to learn from that. But, if you say, oh, well, if I did this again, 9 times out of 10, I win. So I play 10 more games. I'm in good shape doing that.
That's right. And if you're streaming, be like me, and you always go for the top deck 1 in 17 chance because it's hilarious when you hit it and
Eventually, it's
it's
gonna happen.
exciting.
It's gonna happen.
Leroy off the top, 1 in 17, let's go. Oh, it's the best.
I get a lot of
uh,
mileage out of 33 percenters.
that's, yeah, that's right. Always hover. Um, okay, I want to talk as well about now let's kind of compare a bit of card games that are a bit different. So you said, like, let's say for poker and even maybe Hearthstone and Marvel Snap, there's a lot of similarities there, right? With the kind of the mindset and even the going for outs, or in Marvel Snap specifically, things like the kind of betting your cubes and being able to retreat and really not lose as much. But what about card games that have a lot of different mechanics? So here's one example that for me I have kind of struggled with card games is the aspect of various card games with like minion or creature fights. Now, in Hearthstone, that's not really a thing because in Hearthstone, you get to choose if your minion is going to attack into one of their minions or if it's going to go face. But you have games like Pokemon, Magic, Legends of Runeterra that basically you declare something as an attacker, and then your opponent can block with one of their things. And there's not like you're not targeting their face directly. So there's, for me, like that's been kind of a huge learning curve in some of the games. It's like, wait, I can't just hit their face. Okay. And then, but if I attack with all of my things and their things live, then my things can't block next turn. And then all of their things just get through. Whereas, in Hearthstone, it's kind of like, well, you can make some trades and then, or you can order things differently, right? In Hearthstone, you could be like, this minion's going to attack there, and then I'm going to play this spell, then this other minion is going to attack over here, and you can
Right.
set things up like that. But yeah, in games like Magic and Hearthstone, Legends of Runeterra, you can't really do that. So for me, like that's been a huge struggle, is learning when do I have to hold certain, things back for defense, or when do I have to, manage those, and are there multiple turns where I'm not even attacking because I have to block and I'm just waiting for draws now? Or how am I managing that? So have you noticed anything like that? It's like kind of like a huge difference that's felt like a huge like learning curve for you in various games?
Definitely. Like, actually, what really majorly drew me to Hearthstone was the mana mechanics that they did compared to Magic, for instance. Like, Magic game has been around for so long, um, and you have lands in your deck, and you just have to actually draw them. So don't put too many in your deck, but don't put too few in your deck because you need to, have them at the right time so you can actually do things. And I remember that being just a huge learning curve for me when I haven't played very much Magic the Gathering, but I played like a little bit, and I would get so frustrated that I just couldn't draw the forest. I say forest because, come on. I'm a hunter player. Of course I was gonna play like green in Magic. They have like big beasties. I love that. But I was like, where are my forests? I need to draw them. Why aren't I drawing them? Now I have like just a couple lands and I can't play anything and I'm super frustrated. So like Hearthstone simplifying that and just have, oh, you get a mana every turn was like a massive draw to me, and one of the things that got me into it. But there's plenty of other mechanics, and it comes back to, for me, like anytime I found something really challenging, that's when the research aspect would come in. Like, okay, I tried it a little bit, it didn't work out. I'm not approaching it the right way. Let me see what other people who know what they're talking about do and say, and look up some things. Interestingly enough, my approach is a lot similar to your approach, for like new archetypes when it comes to new games, new other things that I don't have any familiarity with. I'm going to go into research mode just like you. I'm like, okay, let me look it up. I'm going to read some articles about it. I'm going to watch some gameplay if I can, like videos, and then I can try to figure it out. So I'm not just like blindly stumbling around and cursing everything.
That is so funny. I am, again, the opposite. If I'm
Nice.
learning a new game, I'm like, all right, I'm going to dive in. I'm going to do the tutorial. I'm going to try a handful of games. Like, I'm going to see what the game
I
is
love that.
like. And then I'll go do my research. That's so wild. I love
Yeah.
that. Oh my God. Okay. Oh, that's hilarious. Yeah, that's so funny because, like, I feel like what you were saying earlier for a new deck is exactly how I approach new games. I'm like, I'm just going to try it. I'm going to see these mechanics because for me, like, I'll try to do research and they're talking about mechanics or cards or like a keyword. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to understand their deck guide. And I'm like, what is that keyword? I'm like, okay. And then finally, I'll do the tutorial and I'm like, oh, that thing happens when the card gets played. Okay, like that makes more sense, you know? But like if I try to do that research first, for me, I'm just like, I don't, it's like gibberish. I'm like, I don't know what any of this is saying. Like, I have no clue. So, yeah, that's so interesting. And again, this just like, this is why I thought this was a great topic, right? Is that everybody
Yeah.
has these different approaches and you know it's all just about like finding how you learn and try both ways. You know, is it that doing that research first and you're like, cool, I can understand this and then I'm going to go apply it, or do you have to try things first, figure it out, learn the mechanics, the keywords, that kind of stuff, you know, and then go do research? Because I think talking about that, like for me, that's been another big thing is not only the game mechanics but keywords is another big like kind of challenge for learning the different card games because I
Oh
can
yeah.
pick up on the mechanics of a game pretty easily now, like after I've tried so many different games. I can pick up on the mechanics pretty easily, but the keywords I'm always like, okay, I got to read this card and take, you know, and especially unlike the digital games where there's the turn timers and stuff. I'm like, don't it's taking me the whole turn to just read my cards because I don't know what any of this stuff means. And you know, I will spend the whole time trying to plan out my turn and be like, okay, so this card has this keyword, so I got to play that after this other card. And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh crap, I have 5 seconds left in my turn because there's a timer. Oh shoot.
Yeah.
So, like, I guess learning the keywords kind of a little bit ahead of time is something that's definitely helped me when I've approached new card games. And I was doing this when I was working through some Eternal last year. Is I actually started a notebook and I went through and I was just like writing all the keywords and like the definitions so that I could go through and like, okay, what are these keywords? Especially the most common ones. Uh, Hey, we have our wonderful friend Azalea in chat. Was on one of our previous episodes, but yeah, talking about this too with magic. Uh, some of these keywords: vigilance, haste, trample, flash. Okay, so like if you're coming from another game, you're like, what does this mean? And also, if you're not used to the mechanic and the keyword, then you got to learn two things and how those work. And it's like, what is this? So yeah, I think for me, not only mechanics but like keywords have been an absolutely huge thing for me to learn because, and what I'll try to do is I'll try to compare it to games that I'm already familiar with. You
Oh
know,
yeah, that
so
helps a lot.
okay, like haste. Oh, okay, that's like charge or rush. You know, depending in Hearthstone, right? Like, okay, cool. That's I can play it and attack with it immediately. Fantastic. If I compare it to, you know, something that I already know, that helps me learn it a lot faster as well. So, especially if I already know one or two card games, I'll try to, you know, take that and like, okay, how do I compare it? I think even the streams when I was learning Eternal last year, I did that all the time. Chat would be like, "Oh, this is whatever." They'd say, "This is that." Oh, okay,
Yeah.
this is like that in Hearthstone. Cool. Now I know. So that's I don't know. Have you felt like you've struggled with that kind of stuff, or how do you approach like keywords as well as mechanics?
Very similar to you, where just like I try to look up the keywords, and absolutely, if I have any other history of a game that I can compare it to, make something like similar really helps. With overall just remembering how to make something work. What's nice is that at least most of these card games, they don't come up with completely outlandish keywords that don't make any sense for what it does. Like imagine naming something slow and it means that you can attack immediately. Like the brain hurting that would follow from that. Like they're not going to do you dirty in the game, right? They're going to help you out a little bit with, hey, you know what this word means. So in a general sense, you can try to figure out what it's going to mean in context of the game, but just look up the keywords in advance. Again, I try to watch somebody play first to get an idea for what that is, especially if they're like talking through the play or something. um, when I first started Hearthstone, even my brother introduced it to me back in like 2015, and I didn't know anything about it. I had no prior research, and he's playing Face Hunter, and he's showing me, oh, you do this, 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 and I just keep seeing. He was on his phone, and I just keep seeing him going, bam, bam, bam. Everything's just moving from his board to the face. And I'm like, okay, this is cool. And then, the
Sick.
portrait on the other side just explodes. And I'm like, oh, hell yeah, this is great. So, it's kind of an easier deck to learn too, which I think is important when you're starting with newer games. There are like the complicated decks that have a lot of different actions and considerations to do, and then there's decks that are a lot easier to play that are pretty straightforward game plans. And that's a great way to like step into a game and learn it. Um, I think it's why a lot of new players in Hearthstone happen to be like hunter players to start, because there's a deck that's committed to, straightforward, hit him in the face as often as possible, end the game. And it translates well to learning, and then you can build on other stuff. Or you could be like me and just never leave the first class that you joined, because like,
That's
that
right.
was the best. I love that one.
Yeah. I mean, that could also depend too on like your card game experience and knowledge, right? If you've played three, four other card games and you're jumping into a new one, you probably could just say, or, go to one of those resources for that game, find a control deck if you like playing control in the other card games, and you could probably pick that up and learn it decently easily, as long as you can pick up the mechanics of the game and the keywords, right? So that's again kind of interesting. Like, how do different people approach it? And I don't know. I think that for me, it's always like just starting with that, starting to try to play, find those things, and yeah, how can I compare it to what I already know so I can learn it even faster? Um, and I definitely wanted to talk about this because again, like I really want to start learning that Soul Forge fusion. The interesting thing with a game like that is that basically the decks are kind of pre-made for you. And you just take these decks and combine them. The decks are all very unique. It's like a game where each deck has a QR code, and it's like no deck is a duplicate, right? They're all, even if it's like one, two cards different, every deck will be completely unique, which is just a really interesting concept to me, especially after playing, something where like we have access to so much stats like HS replay and that stuff where
Mhm.
it's just, okay, cool, there's deck list, copy, paste, everybody plays like the same list. So going into that, I might look at that and say, okay, well, how can I learn this knowing that every deck is going to be completely different and they're not going to be the same lists? That's going to be a whole different thing that I'm going to have to learn. But I will know that ahead of time, right? Going into that, so I can kind of already be aware of it while I learn that, which is just, I don't know, something that I probably never would have thought about before, like having so much card game experience. But like if I were just starting with a game or picking something up, I never would have thought of that. I wouldn't analyze that. I wouldn't think that. I'd just be like, okay, cool, deck, let's play.
Yeah. That's good. Well, it's also really cool, like the experience that you're describing of joining like a new game, like a game that's launching, because you're learning with all the rest of the player base, and that's a whole different experience than jumping into a game that everyone else already has been playing and knows. To where, like, okay, I'm in over my head, and I feel like I'm just trying to keep up with everyone else. When new card games launch, it's really cool that you just get to dive into it with everyone else all at once. It's the Wild West. Let's figure it out.
Absolutely. And I will say for us and anybody listening, I think the two really big ones this year, at least the two biggest ones that I'm keeping an eye on, are that Battle Spirit Saga that's coming out again in just like a handful of weeks here, and then in the fall in September is Disney Lorcana, which they've
Oh, right,
started
right.
like they've showed like a handful of new cards now as they're building up. We're gonna still wait till spring, quote unquote spring, is when we're gonna start hearing like mechanics of the game, like how to play. But yeah, it's kind of interesting looking at that. I guess people who kind of are aware of those card games ahead of time, like you can kind of get a little bit of info, but it's still that same kind of uh, learning at the same time as everybody else, which is either good or bad, I think, depending on how you learn. If you're somebody who's like, give me all of the deck guides that people have already written, all that stuff, it's not really going to be a thing, right?
Yeah,
Until people actually get the game and start playing it and
yeah.
publishing stuff like that. So if you are somebody who does that, maybe you might want to wait a little bit of time at least for other people to kind of get their hands on cards and play, and then you can do your research and then find out from there. If you're somebody who loves just diving in and learning on your own as you go, yeah, jumping in on a brand new card game, absolutely an amazing way to do that. Because then nobody knows what they're doing. And, like, maybe then if you're good at that kind of stuff, like even when, a new expansion or new metas change in a game, I am not good at that. I know, I will say, like, when new expansions hit, my win rate like goes into the into the toilet, like
Same.
it's down the drain. I'm just like,
Yeah.
I don't know what's happening. I don't know what to expect from my opponent. I'm just playing things and hoping, hoping that it's good. Like, okay, I'm just gonna play this card and hope that it's good. And then all of a sudden they might play something, and I'm like, well, that was bad, or wow, that's a really good card.
Like, oh, why
So
don't I run that card? Yeah.
yeah, so I'm on the other side where I do much better when the metas are a little bit more stale and more like kind of figured out, because again, I think because I kind of take that like analytical approach of like, okay, I know what's going to happen this turn, this turn, this turn, this turn, and then, I can see, like you said earlier, those patterns, right? That pattern of play. I can see that. It's, I guess, some of the time it's a little bit more like that chess, like where you start to look 3, 4 turns ahead. You're
Oh,
looking
yeah.
ahead at those moves. But when it's just like chaotic, everybody's learning. Like that's, I will say, I know I've tried over and over and over. I just do not do well. I do not do well. So that's for me why, instead of just diving in and like hoping, I will take, for even the new card games, I will go and I will look up all the cards. I will research those keywords as the game is launching and coming out. I will do all of that like research to give myself the best chance of my brain understanding what's happening, instead of just going in and it being like chaos goblin mode when I'm playing a game.
Absolutely. That's I mean, it's fun. There's fun in the chaos too. Um, but I wish I was better at that myself, but I'm kind of in the same boat where it's like, if things aren't kind of settled at least a little bit meta wise, I'm wandering in the wilderness, like trying to figure out what is happening. Like, okay, now this is going on, and all right, I'll just play another card and hope for the best, give it a few more weeks or something, and then I can figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think the last point I want to make is I think one big difference in card games is, and as we're talking about, right, this like access to information. I think we mentioned it last week, but there's also a bit of a difference in the digital cards versus physical cards as well with that, right? Like, I think people have more instant access to the digital card games because people can, as soon as the expansion launches or whatever, people are online playing and testing. There's streamers playing it. But I don't feel like we see that as much with the physical cards, right? Most of that play testing, people experimenting with decks, is done offline, right? And then afterwards, then they put out their information, they put out their article, their deck guide, whatever it is, or they make their posts on social medias. But there seems to be like a little bit of time where it's, they have to go physically do those testings and that kind of stuff, and then they can put out that information. Whereas the digital games, it's like right then and there, right?
Oh yeah,
You
it's
know,
quick.
I'll like you'll have people, go into streams and it'll be like the expansion's out for like 5 minutes and they're like, "What's the best deck of the expansion?" Well, like it just
Love
came out
that
5 minutes ago.
question.
Hold on, but
That's my
like
favorite question.
but people immediately are already able to go in and start asking that, right? They're already able to go and start seeing that information. So I think that's also another thing to think about when you're kind of learning, and especially when you're trying to learn those changes, is try to look at that aspect of, is the card game that you're learning or the expansion for a digital game or a physical game, and when you might have access to that information. Try to follow people on socials and stuff like that that might post quickly if that's what you're aiming for, right? Like, even if it's a physical game, there's going to be other content creators and that kind of stuff who are trying to put out information as soon as they can about things. So try to find them, follow them, and that way you can have that information as quickly as possible as well.
For sure. Yeah. There's so many resources almost all the time. I mean, definitely digital card games have like more and faster, but even like physical card games, it's just like maybe a little bit of a slower pace. But you can always find so many different things and so much written about the whatever you're trying to dive into that those resources are always available. Everyone learns differently. You might want to dive in, but if you want to learn a little bit first, even the startup games, even something that's brand new, you can find some literature on it and you can brush up and just give yourself, I don't know, maybe more of a fighting chance before you just jump right in. But to each their own.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I would say again, for me, like, if you're someone who likes doing that kind of little bit of research or figuring out how you're going to do things, analyzing that, like, is it physical, is it digital, what access will I have to cards? Again, Azalea is bringing up a really good point too with the like physical card games. You know, do you have the ability to travel to go to events or even to have access to people to play with, to be able to learn the card game or learn different
Yeah.
decks and do play testing? Those are all things that you may want to consider if you're thinking about getting into a new game, a new card game, or if you want to improve at a game. So those are definitely all factors. But again, there's things that you can do. I've noticed myself that a lot of these games, even in the physical card games, are putting a lot of their information on their websites and that kind of stuff too, right? So you can go onto their website. They have their whole learn to play section. It'll have the rules. It'll have maybe a video, like a tutorial video. So you can learn at least how to play it without having to go to a local game store or travel to an event to at least learn how to play initially. So that's something that I myself have been using as well. That it's like, okay, great, these sites have this because yeah, I live kind of in the middle of nowhere. There's the nearest big city is like a 5 hour drive away, so it's a little ways away. So for me, I'm like, I kind of have to use that as a way to learn before I can try those physical card games.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And if you can travel, it definitely can add a lot to the learning experience. It's certainly not a necessity, but um, I love that. Like if that's an option, if there's a local game store, like first is really cool to support your local game stores, and second, like you get to meet a lot of really cool and interesting people, especially on like launches of new games and stuff. So if that's something that you can find available in your budget, your time, um, distance, whatever it might be, I'd always highly recommend that, especially if you're diving into a new game. Not a not a necessity, not a requirement, but a really nice luxury.
Absolutely. Yeah. 100% agreed. I'm hoping to go to some events this year
Yeah.
and pick up on some of that myself. So we'll see. We'll see. But thank you for indulging me in this topic today.
Oh, this was a lot of fun. I love
Yeah,
talking about like the different learning aspects of games. We could probably talk for even longer than this, but we can't do
probably,
it forever.
probably. Yes. But we hope that you enjoyed this discussion as well. Please let us know if you did, or if you want us to dive, deeper into certain aspects of this or things similar. Let us know.
Absolutely. And to wrap up the show, just again, want to say thank you all for joining us this week. If you or someone you know would be interested in joining us, then please reach out to us. You can email us at tccgroundtable@protonmail.com. Follow us on Twitter, TCCG Roundtable. Use our top pinned tweet for a link to our Discord, or use the link in the description. Um, our Discord, of course, you can find that link right there, and check out our video version if you're not watching live, or if you want to check back on it later on Dragon Rider's YouTube channel, Dragon Rider TCCG. And we are everywhere you can find audio podcasts. Also, a big thank you to our affiliate Inked Gaming, where you can find their link in the links as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And Ron, where can people find you?
And of course, you can find us individually. Um, I am on Twitter at Ron_HS. You can find me on YouTube at RonMexico HS. And you can find me on Twitch at RonMexico HS as well. And for you, Dragon Rider, where can people find you?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter. That's DawnieDK, DAWNIEDK. You can find me on Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, all of that good stuff. Dragon Rider TCCG. And if you enjoy the podcast as well, I also do a weekly podcast called Doctor Three, where we talk about standard Hearthstone, and we often do topics like this as well. I love talking about just like the mindset aspect of learning and improving and, and all of that. So, we go in depth specifically into Hearthstone, and maybe do deck guides and card reviews and all that, but also mindset.
Awesome.
Well, thank you again, everyone, for listening this week, and we will see you at the roundtable.
Take care.